Hello, this is the Indigenous Hands, the Indigenous Voices. Once again, it is another wonderful time that we are here to bring knowledge to you about sign languages in Indigenous African deaf communities. It's my pleasure to come to you today with a new knowledge which I believe that you are going to so much enjoy. Alright, don't go nowhere. Let us begin. Before I continue, I want to express my gladness to announce to you that the first batch, the coursework of the first batch of the online certificate course in sign linguistics and interpreting has just ended, and it was awesome. So the students are right now going with their field works for the rest of the month before the end of the year. So it has been wonderful moments of knowledge we spent in the class every week, and I'm glad that we are able to round up the courseworks, and my appreciation goes to Mary Edward and the students that will soon graduate from that course. To continue on this topic, I want to cast a reflection to what we have discussed the past 2 weeks on the topic. In the first week, we dealt with the introduction and were able to mention the hand shape and the movement partially, but we talked about how sign language develops in children, and we looked at some of the preliminary issues that have to do with that, making a very direct comparison between the production of speech in children and production of signs in children. Remember, what we're dealing with is language development amongst deaf children. In other words, deaf child language development. That's what we're looking at. In the second week, we went ahead to also talk about more of the movements, the kind of movements that the hands make when a child is signing, which of course is the same when an adult is signing, but we kind of try to bring the notion and the idea that whatever linguistic attitude that we develop as users of language begins as children or babies within the first 5 years of a child's life. That's when it's expected to have developed. So as adults who use languages, we use old habits. we are old habit users. That's what we are, because it is something that we developed when we were growing up within the first 5 years of our life. So the same applies to a deaf child that has an enabling environment for language development and is exposed to sign language early, and the same applies to them. So that has been our discussion for the past 2 weeks. So in a nutshell, I've been looking at how the child develops sign language by incorporating the manual articulators, the same way the hearing child develops spoken language by incorporating the vocal articulators. And these two things are the same, different applications, but same goal. Different method, different modality, but same goal, same intuition. And it is important that we who describe and analyze linguistic matters to know how to also incorporate what happens in a deaf child when they are developing language in relation to what happens in a hearing child when language is being developed. Very important. I'd like to give you some few information about what we've been doing for the past few months in our project. I'd like to share with you that Recently we have taken our documentation project to another level, and we've been working with some group of deaf signers who are providing the signings of the expressions and words that we need in our project. And it's been also fun working with a group of deaf signers who are good in signing in indigenous sign language. So I remember when we were doing orientation about what we need, we asked the deaf signers to give us a signing of some expressions and words, and we said, oh, we don't want you to sign in any foreign sign language or the English sign. We want you to give us the signs in indigenous sign language. So when the videos were collected and so we were doing some of the analysis, so some of them were like, oh, we didn't know that's what you wanted from us. We didn't know that's what you wanted from us. We thought these are not sign language. They are demonstrations. They say they are not sign languages. What is real sign language is the one that is learned in school. I said, okay, all right. I know maybe you didn't know, but this is what we want. We want that form of language that you acquired. If you were deaf from childhood, those ones you call gestures that you acquired. That's what we wanted, okay? And so far it's been awesome, and we are looking forward to coming up with some great products of that ongoing research. So today I'm going to be looking at the topic I tagged language development in deaf children, dealing with gestures and signs, or sign language development dealing with gestures and signs. I am so glad that the study of sign languages has come back to be considering the roles that gestures play in signing. I have treated a topic here that has to do with gestures, and I remember that when we started this platform, I started dealing with the history of sign languages in Africa. Surprisingly, a topic that I have found that many deaf people that I have had interactions with don't even know about, and also sign language interpreters, some of them don't even know about the fact that sign languages had been there before ever there were deaf educational schools, and before ever there were other methods of teaching deaf children in school. So I remember that we talked about the fact that foreigners that came into Africa from Britain and maybe Europe saw the signing system the deaf and hearing people used. They regarded those as just gestures. They regarded them as gestural communications. They regarded them with every other term but sign language. I know it was still when sign languages had not really gained enough attention and recognition by both scholars and language users. It wasn't regarded language then. So, but particular to the signing systems that were observed in Africa, it wasn't surprised that they were fast to say, I'm a gesture of communications, So, but the irony of it is that the study of sign language today is talking about the relationship between signing itself and gestural communications, signing systems and gestures, then signs and gestures. So these are different levels of analysis, in sign language studies. But the beautiful aspect of it is that linguists are coming to look at the tiny relationship between the signs we sign and the gestures we make. These happen both amongst deaf signers and hearing people who are not signers. So several studies have been done by several scholars looking at this aspect of study. What relationships do gestures have with, signs we make? One of the studies that I have come in contact with, I enjoyed so much, is a study done by Adam Shebrey and Caroline Jones and Dennis Burnham. And this study tries to compare the action gestures and the classifier verbs of motion. And they took evidence from Taiwan Sign Language and also the gestures made by non-signers without speech. And it is interesting to know that they looked at how classifiers can relate to gestures, more to gestures than signs. And what are classifiers? When we sign and we combine handshake and motion to express an idea, most of the times or many of the times a verbal idea, to express a verb. So handshake plus motion. For instance, a signer uses this movement to indicate motion, walking, possibly two legs walking, not two people walking, two legs walking. And it is a sign that combines a particular handshake and a particular movement to indicate what we are talking about. On a good day, I can make this movement without signing to indicate walk. In fact, when we were children, we used to make this movement to show walking. And it is a sign too. So, children who are learning how to sign, they incorporate a lot of gestures. And how do they deal with this? The thing that is closest in letting us understand how deaf children who are learning how to sign deal with gestures is to understand how children who are learning how to speak deal with expressions. Certain expressions that children make that are meaningless. I kind of mentioned a little bit of it in my last discussion. When you have lived with children, you will understand that their language is different. Even though we say that children imitate from the environment, from the language models, but they also construct their own language in whichever language that is. For instance, my last daughter, till today, calls water wawi. In my home, nobody says wawi. What the heck is wawi? Where did she learn that? I mean, sometimes we have tried to make a conscious effort to say it is now wawi, it is water. Okay, tomorrow wawi. For God's sake, she's still at the age where wawi is water for her. Okay, and so she has wawi and has awi, which I kind of think she learned from some of the videos that she watches. Awi and wawi, of course, homophones, and sometimes they mean synonyms to her. All right.